Hey there, and welcome to Crushing with Abby O. I'm your host, Abby O'Sullivan. This podcast is inspired by over 10 years in the beauty industry and the stories shared between a beauty professional and her clients. The type of girl talk that only happens behind closed doors or in the chair. Along with hilarious stories based on real life and the dating world, I'll be dishing out all of the secrets on self-care, health, and fitness. As a longtime lash extension artist turned health and fitness coach, I'm passionate about helping you view healthcare as self-care through nutrition, lifestyle, mindset, movement, stress management, and more. So grab a drink and a snack and come join me for a laugh. Hey, welcome back, Crushers. Welcome back to Crushing with Abby O. On today's episode, I've got a very special guest, a colleague and mentor of mine, Mike Millner. And I'm so excited to share our conversation with you today. It's around navigating identity shifts through your life and through your health journey. It's not something that we really expect to take place. And when you realize that it's happening or that it has happened, it can be a little bit disarming. You might have a little bit of a grieving period. You might be grieving for yourself or for relationships or for times in your life. And so I love having Mike's insight on navigating this and the phases that we go through to become aware of how we need to shift and then staying grounded through it all whenever you lose your motivation. Mike Millner has been a high-level nutrition coach for almost 10 years. He has a gift for understanding the psychological and physiological needs of his clients, which has led to thousands of success stories. His personality-based approach with an emphasis on mindset has set a new standard in the industry for which other coaches, including myself, can learn and implement through the Neurotyping Certification. I've taken that certification and it is amazing, and I love using that in my coaching as well. Without further ado, here is Mike Millner. Welcome, Mike Millner, to the podcast. It is so great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so let's let the listeners know a little bit about you and how you became a coach and creator and owner of P.O.P.
So I have been the creator and owner of P.O.P for about 3.5 years now. I've been in the industry for a little over a decade at this point. Started as a personal trainer and then found my passion more on the nutrition side of things, just because that was what I always struggled the most with and what I noticed other people struggling with. And so that was what led me down that path, and became a coach for another company. Saw some things that I didn't really like about just the industry in general, the way that they were doing things, a lot of the shortcuts and automation and, kind of placing people in a diet box, so to speak. So that's why I created P.O.P. All of this came to be just from my own personal struggle. I was an athlete my whole life. And then after college, gained a lot of weight, went down the chronic dieting rabbit hole and did things the wrong way for a number of years, and struggled with disordered eating, body image issues. My relationship with myself, with food, with exercise was all very, we'll say, rocky, to put it kindly. And crawling out of that hole was ultimately what led me to want to pay it forward and help other people avoid the mistakes that I made along the way.
Mm-hmm. And in a very individualized way.
Yeah, using
personality types and like basing training and nutrition around that, and even letting people in on more insight on themselves, I think is extremely gratifying for everyone, because it just makes things so much easier.
Yeah, it was kind of cool how that all evolved, because it's like the vehicle of nutrition and training was just one path to more self-awareness, more self-confidence, just a better understanding of self and all of those things. I don't necessarily know that I planned for that. It just kind of through experience and learning and my own personal journey, and then teaching others and like seeing how many people truly gravitated towards the idea of understanding your personality and the role that plays in really every aspect of your life. And we just happen to use nutrition and training as a vehicle, but it's all encompassing. And so I think that's been the huge, the main takeaway for me is just the benefits to overall quality of life and well-being and relationships. And just it's been, kind of cool to see just the overall path that everything has taken.
I agree. So we've been talking about, like, in some of our mentoring calls about kind of like identity shifts. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that more with you today. Because I know that I've gone through that in my life. And sometimes it's really subtle. Like, you don't really realize like how much you're kind of growing and changing and shedding that like kind of old layer of yourself. And sometimes it's a little less subtle. Sometimes it's kind of a smack in the face and you're sort of forced to like really think about things and be humbled a bit in that process. At least in my experience, I've literally felt like I've had a whole pie of humble like thrown right in my face, like humble pie, not just the slice, like a whole thing. So with no pineapple, because that doesn't belong on any type of pie, pizza, or other, just saying, inside joke. Um, so in your life, like what are some points where you felt that like expanding, growing, evolving, kind of some of that shedding of those layers? Like you've gone from athlete to not so much, to back into the gym and to a coach and to a business owner. What are some kind of key points in your life where you have felt that, maybe besides what I mentioned even?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because a lot of it I became aware of after the fact. Like when I graduated college and gained a bunch of weight, having been an athlete, that was like the first time where my identity was really shaken, like to my core. And I didn't recognize it at the time. If I did, I probably would have done things considerably different. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but the reason why I felt this intense pressure to lose weight as fast as humanly possible was because I identified as an athlete. And my social circles were all with people that I played sports with growing up, and high school teams and organized sports in college and all of that. And now I felt like, well, I didn't belong anymore because physically I was different. And I knew that, let's say I went back home and saw friends from high school, they'd be like, wow, what happened to you? And this was the story that I played in my head. And I didn't want those conversations to happen. So for me, the solution was I need to get back to myself, which was like, I have to lose this weight so I can fit in again.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't recognize that thought pattern, but it led me down the path of chronic dieting, doing hours of cardio, restricting my calories as much as I could. And then, of course, I would lose the weight, gain it back. And I think that anybody who's been significantly overweight and has tried to lose a considerable amount of weight, we find this identity crisis that happens because people start treating you differently. You start noticing comments. For somebody that may have been happy just like not being seen, now all of a sudden somebody is making a comment that can feel very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a grieving process. I think that that's what most people don't understand is when we go through identity shifts or transformations, there's a grieving process because it comes with inherent loss. We're losing that part of ourselves, even if it's weight and being in a bigger body. There's still inherent loss that comes with that. And a lot of times when you're going through the grieving process, you don't recognize that it's happening. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what pulls you back to the comfort because you're all of a sudden feeling this, we go through this like bargaining phase, the anger phase, all the
Denial.
different, like the
Yeah.
denial, depression, all of the phases
Mm-hmm.
start to come up and we don't know why that's happening. And so we go back to comfort. And sometimes it's just the subconscious, your brain is pulling you back to the predictable known comfort zone, which often happens. Like you lose a considerable amount of weight, all of these things start happening. Your identity is shifting, and then all of a sudden you gain the weight back, and you go back to that comfort zone, and you don't know
Mm-hmm.
why. Because there's that inherent loss that comes with it. So, I referenced this at one point on a post where, when a lobster outgrows its shell, it first has to feel this intense pressure and pain of the previous shell before it knows it's time to get rid of that shell and get into a new, and grow a bigger shell. And so I think of the same thing with humans. Like when we
Mm-hmm.
take that leap and we're trying to evolve, we're trying to grow, we're trying to change, there's inherent loss and pain that comes with that. And we have to accept it and understand that that's not our sign to stay the same. That's actually our sign that we're ready to take the leap and grow and step into that next level version of ourselves, whatever that might look like. So there's been
Mhm.
various things along the way. I mean, I could talk about my identity, with when I went through a divorce and feeling like I was a failure at certain things, like I was a failure at marriage and the
Yeah.
separation that happened with the previous company that I was working for, even though I didn't agree with what they were doing, that separation from something that I had become attached to, again, feeling like, well, I don't belong here. I'm not good at marriage. I'm not good at working for, as an employee, like all these
Yeah.
things you start
So
to label
been there.
yourself, you know,
Yeah.
and we have to really understand, like, there's a reason why we feel that way.
Mhm.
There is that inherent loss and grieving process that needs to happen before we can move on and kind of embrace, the next iteration or evolution that we're going through.
Yeah. And I think that there's so many good points to what you just said as a whole. And I think like acceptance is a big key, and yeah, like it's really hard sometimes to be aware of what it is that you're going through when you're going through it. But accepting that maybe that's no longer you and trying to really embrace that next version, well, that can be really, it can be really hard.
Yeah, any process of change is always met with resistance, which is why change is so difficult in the first
Mm-hmm.
place. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and we can talk about it from like an evolution standpoint, where anything that was unpredictable or unknown was a threat to our survival as a species. So our brain is kind of hardwired to keep us in predictable patterns. Our
Mm-hmm.
brain
Keep us
loves
safe.
predictable patterns because it's safe, it's known, it's predictable. So that's why whenever there's that change that's coming, there's that inherent fear, there's resistance always. And my idea is that the objective is not to get rid of that feeling. It's to learn to accept that it's there and almost become familiar with it and
Mm-hmm.
and like recognize it and acknowledge it. And it's like, okay, I know what this feeling is. I felt this before. And to still do the thing that you need to do, which is that's the challenge. It's like I have this fear, there's this resistance, there's something that's, not quite, I don't feel totally comfortable with this change, but I recognize this feeling and I know that I still need to move forward because that's the best thing for me.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for also like our expectations and then our the perceived expectations of others, and that kind of that fear of not belonging anymore, or not being judged, maybe even being rejected because we've changed something about ourselves, like maybe in a very drastic way, especially losing weight and shifting your lifestyle. Sometimes that costs friendships, and you have to change your thought patterns and your ideas and what's best for you and what's serving you. And sometimes, like, just even for myself, like cutting back on alcohol, it can kind of cause a disruption in some relationships.
Yeah, definitely. I think it kind of brings to light the people that really are supportive and understanding versus those who maybe your relationship was only valid in a certain context. And when people have comments, even though oftentimes we know logically, like it's not really about us, it's more about them. It's still difficult. It's hard to
Hmm.
have that long-standing relationship, and then all of a sudden, because you're trying to better yourself, they're making comments about it, and then the relationship can get tarnished or completely ruined. And it's challenging. And again, I think that sometimes we make those decisions or we acquiesce to the individual because we don't want to rock the boat or whatever. Another defense mechanism to keep us safe, right?
Hmm.
To keep us in that predictable pattern, to keep the relationship status quo and not have to, again, cause any unnecessary drama. So we stay,
Hmm.
we stay as the person that other person is comfortable with versus doing what we need to do. And it's, again, it's an awareness piece first, and then
Yeah.
knowing, okay, I understand what's happening here, but I know that this is in my best interest. So if this person is not supportive, maybe this is somebody that I have to seriously consider not having in my life anymore.
Yeah, I agree. So, as this has happened to you, like as you've had these types of shifts, what has helped you navigate it? Or did you kind of just stumble? Like, I've definitely been able to be aware of some of it. And I know what I was going to say was that You don't have to fit into a mold, and stop trying to make yourself fit into a mold just to appease others. Like, listen to yourself and like what's serving you. I think that's something that a lot of us could do. Like there's caring for others, and yes, there are certain people that we need to care about what they think or what's going on in their lives and how that plays into our lives. But then there's a lot of people I think we're trying to please and make proud of us, or want them to accept us. And it's just not worth it. Like, you just lose yourself in the process.
And people pleasing can be a form of self-sabotage. As a inherent people pleaser, that was hard for me to like accept as real, but it's true. If you are doing something specifically, you're putting yourself last because you think you're doing something that's in somebody else's best interest, but at the same time, you're ignoring your own needs. That's self-destruction. That's self-sabotage.
Mhm.
So there are times where people pleasing is absolute self-sabotage. And again, it's like, number one is start with awareness. That has to be the first step. Okay, I understand
Mhm.
my tendencies here, but now I have to act, because if I'm in this like automatic behavior pattern, I have to actively and consciously make a change so that it doesn't become automatic anymore. And then I can kind of rewire what that behavior looks like. And that's, again, it's why change is so difficult. It's often why
Mhm.
you see people who have been in like a toxic relationship leave a toxic relationship and then immediately go into another toxic relationship, because they've
Yeah.
become so hardwired to accept that toxicity as normal. That becomes their default, that becomes their comfort zone, because they haven't taken the time to actively change that kind of automatic wiring that's in their brain.
Mhm.
It's not easy to do. So it has to start with awareness first. And then it's a conscious effort and continual, reps and failures and getting back up and keep going through the process until, you've come out on the other side.
Mhm. It's like an addiction to chaos. Your nervous system is like trying to keep you safe, but then it's like there's a point where it's not actually serving you in that way, and you have to just stretch your comfort zone and your tolerance of like scary, uncomfortable stuff. So like,
Yeah.
how have you, like, what are some tips or just some things that you've done for yourself to kind of help you navigate through situations like this, where it does kind of require that awareness? I mean, like, how do people, if they're like, well, how do I become aware? Like, what do you say to that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the best question. You don't know where to go.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah. So like we go through like these phases. Like the first phase is unconscious incompetent, which is basically you don't know what you don't know. Like, how can I know there's a problem if I don't know there's a problem?
For
And
sure.
that's the first phase that we're always in. There's going to be red flags that happen where you start to see patterns unfold that are consistent problems. Now, I can tell you personally through my own journey, I made the same mistake so many times because I didn't know it was a problem. So
Mhm.
I was in that unconscious incompetent phase for years of restrictive dieting, body image issues, disordered eating, all of that. I stayed in that pattern because I didn't recognize it was a problem. But then all of a sudden, I had people like my sister, who is a therapist, an eating disorder therapist,
Oh,
tell me,
handy. That's
yeah,
super handy.
she's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of orthorexia?" And I'm like, "No." And she tells me what it is, and I got really defensive. I was like,
Mm.
I'm just trying to be healthy and take care of myself and blah, blah, blah. Right. So then later on, and I had a minute, I'm like, oh, she might be onto something. And then
Considered it.
start to spot other patterns. Like I'm out with family and I'm like, no, I don't want to like have a piece of birthday cake. And it's like, ooh, actually, I kind of do. Why am I saying? And now you start to put some pieces together.
Mhm.
Now that like takes you into that next level of like, I'm consciously incompetent, right? I'm aware, but I'm still doing the thing, right? So
Mhm.
like I know there's a problem, but I'm still going down that same pattern. Then we have to get into the like conscious competence, which is I am actively pursuing a change to the behavior that I want. And then ultimately it becomes second nature, which you end up being unconsciously competent, where you don't even have to
Mhm.
think about it. You just do it. And so that's kind of like the phases that we go through. Sometimes it takes years, like I experienced. Other times when you have more experience with that process, you can pull from other areas of your life and be like, okay, I recognize this from when I went through this. What did I do to, help? What was helpful at that time? You start to pull off of life experience and other areas of your life. A lot of times people can have like a growth mindset with, let's say, their work and their career, but they have a very fixed mindset with their fitness and nutrition. And so
Mhm.
you want to help them see like, hey, this other area of your life where you see things this way, can we apply that same thought process to this area of your life? And it's like, oh, that makes so much sense. And so if you can
Yeah.
pull from, and it does help to have coaches and mentors and other people that are not like, they're kind of like that objective guide
Mhm.
to help you see the light. Because sometimes if it's like my sister was too close, like she's my sister. So like immediately I'm
You
like,
were
no,
like,
that's
eh.
not true.
This is not my
I
problem.
was
It's your problem.
exactly. So those are all ways to just, it's just through life experience and then pulling from other areas of your life. And, ultimately you want to get to the point where, you have a little bit more, with more self-awareness and growth, you start to identify those patterns quicker than normal. You're just
Mhm.
reducing the time that it takes you to facilitate that change. So there's really no like blueprint other than that.
Yeah. Number one, I totally relate because it's like I'll have such a growth mindset in one place. And then some people are like, we are settling over here. I'm like, wait, what? I thought I was doing so good. Like, like, how do I not see that still? But that's just like, that's the beauty of the human experience and our own growth journeys and evolving and learning and then taking hopefully those lessons and applying them somewhere in your life. And then also I was going to touch on that it is really helpful to have community and have some people in your life that can, whether that's a therapist, a coach, like really good friends, your parents, like family members, which can be a little too close sometimes, but just having some people that are willing to give you like a little bit of realness or a kind of outside perspective. Because if you're really struggling, like it's okay to ask for help and to need help. And sometimes we just have to like really put aside our own ego and our own pride and allow those people in. There's a lot of people genuinely want to help and care about you. And it certainly does make that process a little bit easier. And I know like I've leaned on my family. When I was going through my divorce, I realized like I really do have a great group of friends. And where I think my ex kind of thought he was like, this is sort of like personal, but like he was like afraid to separate because he didn't want me to fail essentially. He thought that I needed him. And I mean, I didn't at that point. So not in that way. I was like, not if this isn't like working for us. But that kind of hurt that he was staying just because he didn't think I could make it on my own.
Yeah.
Like that's not a reason to stay in a fucking marriage. Like you either want to be in it and we love each other or we got to peace out. But when I was going through that and I realized like how many good friends I had that were there for me, that helped me through that change. And I had my ride or die, like going out social partners and my people to lean on that had been there before me. And then I've also gone through that with a job where I definitely felt like kicked out of the tribe and like who the fuck was I now? Like
Yeah.
I don't even know, but I kind of leaned into not really the gym community as a whole, like by getting back into the gym, but just the fact that like that was a place where I felt really supported and good and empowered. And then I wanted to do that for myself. So it was sort of a shift like, okay, well, who else can I be and what else can I become besides this thing that I've been for a decade? And yeah, and then so here we are, like constantly.
Yeah, I think that's why like the environment that you cultivate for yourself is so important. And that includes
Mhm.
like your actual physical environment where you are, but also like your social environment, your online environment, what you consume, like that, all of that plays a role. Because if you're constantly looking at, stuff on Instagram or Facebook that makes you feel worse, you're obviously not going to help your cause. So it's being very selective about the environment that you create. And I think that like from the relationship side that you mentioned, I am not a believer in the whole like you complete me concept of relationships. I just
Yeah.
my feeling is that an individual should be whole on their own. And if you have, so it's more so like you complement me, not you
Yeah.
complete me. Like we are
Yeah.
totally good on our own. We are complete and whole people on our own.
Agree.
But we also like to be together. We like to do life together. We feel like we complement each other on this journey together. That's more what I view as like a healthy relationship, not this reliance or one person's like, all right, well, I need this person in my life. Like, and so
Yeah.
anyway, that's my own personal belief.
Attachment styles, people, look it up. It's good to know. Love languages. What else? What else is there? So whenever you're feeling like you're kind of losing some enthusiasm or motivation, or like you want to burn everything to the ground, when you're just feeling like something kind of needs to change, like what helps you through, like what do you do? What helps you stay grounded in that process and kind of not just like lose your mind on yourself and everyone else?
Yeah, that's a great question because it happens to me relatively because just my nature is I like to do things well, and I want to achieve a certain level of success, but every time I reach a certain level of success, it's never good enough. And I've kind of come to accept that it never will be good enough, and I'm okay with that because I don't think that there's ever a finish line where it's just like, all right, I'm here now. Now that's it. Like because I always think that there's more. Like I always think I'm capable of more. There's
Yeah.
more out there to achieve. And I kind of like the idea that it's like this constant pursuit that will never go away. So
Yeah.
I've kind of reframed. I used to think it was like very unhealthy. Like, why can't I ever be satisfied? And it's not that. I am very satisfied. I'm super grateful. I feel very fortunate for everything that I've experienced in life, everything that I've accomplished in life. But I also like the idea that it's just there's no finish line, kind of like what I tell clients when they're on their like,
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Health journey is the same thing.
there really is no finish line. Like, why are we rushing to like accomplish this weight loss goal when like you're gonna get there and you're gonna realize that you still have life to live. And if you're not doing it in a way that fulfills you, then it's really not going to last anyway. So let's focus on that. So sometimes it's just taking a step back. I think that that's usually when I get caught up in like the burnt out, I'm stressed, I want to burn it all down. It's because I'm so focused on like being in the business and not taking a step back and seeing like the big picture. We're getting back in touch with the things that I truly enjoy doing in life. So I know when that happens, like it's probably time for me to like travel fulfills me more than probably anything else, experience other parts of the world. It's like, let me go and, I'm a big like sports fan or comedy fan, like get back to the stuff that actually fills my cup where I'm like, all right, I need to separate myself for a second. Let me like plan a trip, or even if it's just like a night out, or like
Mm-hmm.
go into the city and do something and experience just a different environment or vibe or whatever it is. And, get back to the stuff that I truly love. Maybe it's like going to spend time with family or going to see friends, or getting perspective back. I think that that's always
Mm-hmm.
often comes down to like a lack of perspective. So it's like disconnect for a second, take a step back.
Yeah.
Um,
Get out of
and
your head, like get out of that space. Yeah.
yeah, get out of that like daily grind of like, I have to accomplish this thing tomorrow. No,
Mm-hmm.
you actually don't. You don't have to. You're just telling yourself that. So I think that those are some of the things that I do to handle it.
Yeah. Awesome. What is on your bucket list? You have like a kind of top 5 for a bucket list? You have a bucket list?
I mean, I don't have like a firm bucket list. Most of the stuff is like, I just want to see more of the world. I want to
Mm-hmm.
travel. And
Yeah.
it's not so, I've been fortunate enough to see some pretty amazing places. Like Iceland would be at the top of the list for
Yeah.
that. But there's stuff like that. Like there's a hike in Iceland that I want to do that I'm probably gonna attempt next summer. I've got on my radar, but just different part. I'd love to get to Australia. I'd love to get
Yeah.
to. I've been to Thailand, but I'd love to get to like Japan, Asia, like different. I don't know. I just want to see more of the world.
Yeah.
So most of my bucket list revolves around that. And there's, I mean, there's stuff that I want to do in just experiences. So people that I would like to see perform or whatever, like
Yeah. Like who?
artists,
Like who?
comedians. So I mean, when it comes to music, I'm a big like hip hop fan. Like one of
Yeah, I
my big
know.
regrets is that like I never got to see Biggie perform live, and like I feel like one that would have been an amazing show to see. I've seen some pretty amazing performances. I've seen Jay-Z, I've seen Eminem. So for like artists that I'd still love to be able to see, I'm actually going to J. Cole concert
Oh,
next
nice.
Wednesday.
Love him.
So he's one of my favorites. I'd love to see Kendrick Lamar perform again. And then, like comedians, I'm a huge Kevin Hart fan, Chris Rock. It's like, I have, it's for me, life is more about experiences than it is
Yeah.
about,
Things.
material things.
Hmm.
So anytime I have opportunities for experiences like that, like I want to sit on the floor of a Sixers game. I want to, just do like
Yeah.
immerse myself in stuff that I find to be very fulfilling.
I'm actually like pretty similar. Like I love exploring new places. I love concerts and I love getting lost in a concert, like just like totally letting myself like be a part of it and just be one. And like I'm a big fan of Chris Stapleton, and I like that's like church to me. So like I just let it go. And I actually was gonna ask who your favorite rapper was. So favorite rapper is. So would it be Biggie, or do you have like a couple of favorites, like maybe one past one that's still alive?
Yeah. So if you're just like going, who I think is the greatest ever, I think it's Biggie. And it's the argument is often like he didn't have that much body of work, which I think is more of a testament to his talent. He was so young, and
Mm-hmm.
still, like, I think that he was just starting to like scratch the surface of the impact that he was going to have.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a tragic loss,
I
but
absolutely agree.
he would be who I think is the best ever. My favorite artist current date is J. Cole.
Yeah.
It's funny because there's something, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but there's something about the timing of like the universe with J. Cole in my life, because every time that I was going through something very like my divorce, like my move across the country, losing my job and having to start my own business, getting into like a new relationship, that all of these crazy life events like all coincided with J. Cole music. And it
Yeah.
was like, oh, this new album came out. And it was like the thing that kept me grounded
Yeah.
in those
It's
moments where
like
I'm like,
your theme album.
like, like
Yeah.
life is so crazy right now. I'm just gonna go for a walk and play the new J. Cole album. And it was
Love
like the
it.
thing. And his lyrics always spoke to me. And I was like, how does he know what's happening in my life right
Yeah.
now? It's like,
He's
um,
he's
that
awesome.
was
Like lyrically, like I really like, I would just like just more intelligent, but like I just like what he does. Yeah. So on the complete opposite end of that spectrum, when I was going through my divorce, like it's been, well, 10 years this month. It was Adele's album, her second one, and it's like the sad one, but it like played perfectly with what I was going through, like literally perfectly. I also actually read the book Eat, Pray, Love around that time as well. And I don't know if you're familiar with the movie with Julia Roberts, where she travels to like three different places and like finds herself again or whatever, if she's going through a divorce. But that really spoke to me. Like it was okay to have participated willingly in that, and it's okay to want out of it. Like I don't know why I needed that permission, but like that book was just kind of an eye opener to me. I did not unfortunately get to go on a worldwide tour, but like I did grow a business and enjoyed my life as a single person. So that's great. But yes, and then I was moving to Nashville about the time Adele's next album came out. I wouldn't say that one was necessarily as like relevant, but it did. There was a song that one of my friends and I would laugh about because it was something about missing her friends. And I was doing her lashes for the last time here in my apartment because I'd like stopped my business, and we were just laughing, like, that's gonna be me. I'm gonna be in Nashville. I miss my friends. Like, anyway. Yeah, I totally get that. Are there like do you have like a few, because I like music and I have all kinds of things on my playlist, and I actually just one of my clients and I listened to Snoop Dogg radio during her lash appointment last week, so like that was super fun time. She's like trying to lay very still, she's rapping every single word. She's from Detroit. I was like, I know like every about 5 lines, and then I don't know a line, but it's just funny how it takes you back.
yeah,
And
that's
they're
really
these
can.
guys so fucking talented too. Like,
Yeah, that's for me the same. It's like when I hear something, I can always like remember the time and the place. Like there's certain songs that come on and it will remind me of like high school or remind me of college, or
Mm-hmm.
it'll take me back to like the gym and things like that. Like we had at the gym that I started working at, one of the trainers there would do JT Friday. So like I can't hear Justin Timberlake without being back in that gym. Like I can picture the whole surround. I can see the people. I can feel it. It's like just it transcends time and space. It's crazy.
Oh, I love that. So do you have like a handful of like hype songs or just kind of like your favorite songs that maybe our listeners should give a try?
Oh my God, my workout playlist is like 180 tracks. So
Should you
there's
make it public so people can join in? Is it on Spotify?
probably should. It's on Spotify. There's some definite bangers on there, and it's mostly old school, but just because I feel like I grew up in the like golden era of hip hop.
Yeah.
But there's still some new stuff on there. I continuously add to it if like I hear something new. I'll just throw it on there. So it's quite the collection at this point.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we're going to be asking for your Spotify playlist, so you better get ready.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anybody
Make
should
it public. I'll put it in the show notes.
be entertaining. Next time you go to the gym, you're gonna be like, I PR'd my next lift because of Mike's workout playlist.
Yeah. People are like, what do you listen to? I'm like, I mean, sometimes I listen to podcasts depending on like the day, like if it's upper body, I can handle it. Although I've been listening to Smartless a lot lately, which is fantastic podcast. Also, your podcast, I'm just going to give you a shout out. Like your podcast is amazing too. And for someone on their health journey that has a lot of questions and or just lots of like thoughts and needs to learn more, like you break things down and you talk about such a wide variety of topics too. So I always appreciate your podcast because I always learn something, and I like how you frame things and your perspective on things. But in terms of like entertainment podcasts, like Smartless is pretty funny. It's got Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes, and they just interview like all their celebrity friends. And I'll be sitting there trying to like do some seated presses, and I'm like laughing. I'm like, this isn't really the best time, but like that's sometimes how I can pass a workout. But I listen to like all kinds of stuff, and some days you really like deadlift day, need the hype music. So I'll be getting your playlist. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Will you let everyone know like where they can connect with you further on social media?
Yeah, for sure. So best place is probably Instagram. My handle is @coach_Mike_Millner. And yeah, my podcast is Mind Over Macro. So any podcast platform, you can find it on there. And those are pretty much the best two places to connect.
Amazing. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and kind of diving in deep and then coming back out. So thank you.
I think that music is still a deep topic too, because
yeah.
I've had like conversations with friends where we've literally sat up till like 4 a.m, just like analyzing Outkast and like every album and going through.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I totally get it. I love music too. And that's why I wanted to ask you about it. Cause I know you're a big hip hop fan, rap fan. And like when I was sitting there with my client on Friday, I really was just listening, like the different beats, the different, like the samples, the Isley Brothers that they all like sampled so much. And I'm like, that was just so cool. When I figured that all that connection out, I was like, man, that's so neat. And how they come up with this and just the raps and like all the lyrics, how kind of fun and crazy it was and is. But yeah, I was like, man, this is just so fun. And we like turned it way up and like, wonder if the rest of my clients want to listen to this the rest of the day. And like, they actually don't care. Like they're tired of my John Mayer music apparently. So whatever, put them to sleep.
Yeah, I'll say my most underrated hip hop artist of all time is probably Andre 3000 from Outkast. Even though Outkast is well known, I don't think people truly appreciated how talented he is.
Mm-hmm.
Even just as a solo artist, but so he would be my most underrated. He's in my top 5 all time. That's a whole other question. If I had to say a top 5, that's a struggle for me. It probably changes every day, but he's in there solidified. So
yeah, super creative.
Yes.
Like I'm not like super familiar, but just from what I remember, like there's a good use of vocabulary, and I can appreciate and that's how I think I feel about J. Cole too. It just feels like it's not just about like hoes and sex and drugs, and that's okay. That's fun, like rolling down the street on a Friday afternoon with like, what's my name on, but like, there's also that other side.
It's a thought provoke. That's what I prefer. Like my style is more. I'm the same way. Like if it's just mindless and it's hype music and there's no like depth to the lyrics, I'm fine with that. A good beat and hype music, totally
Yeah.
cool. But for me, I prefer the like insightful, thought provoking lyrics. So that's why J.
Yeah.
Cole's at the top.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to hear how that concert is. I regret he came around here locally around the time of his, I guess probably his first album, or at least the one that I know of. So this would have been like 5-6 years ago. And I didn't go because I think because I didn't have anybody to go with. And so I was just kind of like, I don't know. But I had tickets and I didn't go. Like me now would have I just fucking go. But like then I was like, nah, I need a friend. And my friend
Right.
bailed and I was like, nah, never mind.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do that again. But
And that's your bucket list to
yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love concerts.
Watch,
So much
watch
fun.
my stories. I'll probably post all the clips from from the show on Wednesday.
like people are always like, people don't want to see that. Listen, I'll watch it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be your like one viewer that doesn't skip through the whole.
Love it.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was so good chatting with you. And yeah, I'll see you around. So I'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Wow, what a great conversation with Mike. Again, you can find him on Instagram, and I also recommend his podcast, which is Mind Over Macros. Thanks so much, Mike, for coming on. If you are ready to reach your health and body goals in 2022, the Radical Self-Acceptance Method is open for enrollment. In this program, I will guide you through breaking the patterns of diet culture to find self-love and acceptance while ultimately achieving the health and body that you desire. In the notes of this episode, you'll find the link to learn more and apply for the Radical Self-Acceptance Method. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I will talk to you next week.